I was already mentally pretty exhausted, and this was just like the final little nail in the coffin, which was my physical health. So yeah, again, look, in the end, it wasn't serious. I got rid of it when I came back to England. It was fine, but at the time, I just felt like I couldn't give anything more, and because I didn't understand what it was, nor did my employers. So what could they do for me? They couldn't really do anything for me, and I just found myself trying to kind of contain my energy in a very small little air-conditioned room, not even being with the chefs that I was supposed to be working with, and that's not where I wanted to be, and that's not where my employers wanted to be.
What I want to start with is I read somewhere where you're talking about when you went to Mumbai, as I think you were like in your early 20s.
Yeah.
And you said it was a culture shock, and I found myself pulled in lots of different directions. Sometimes it was great, and sometimes it really wasn't.
Yeah. Where's this from?
I don't know. I just read it somewhere. We'll start with this.
It's true, but yeah.
And then we'll weave into things. Yeah. And you said towards the end there was too much interference in the menus, and I got a Parasite. What I'd like to start with, like where this story is going to start, is with the Parasite, right? So
okay. Work back.
So what does you're in Mumbai? You've got a Parasite. What are the thoughts in your head at that specific moment in time?
Well, it went on for a while. I mean, look, it's no those that have been to India. It's not totally uncommon to come back with a minor illness or like something a bit more challenging. I got something called Giardia, which is a waterborne parasite, which lots of people get when they go there. You just got to be a bit careful, and it just meant that I kind of ended up sitting in a very small air-conditioned room in the restaurant, not even in the kitchen, because I couldn't eat, I couldn't absorb anything. I was exhausted. So I wasn't hungry, but I force-fed myself, and everything I force-fed myself, the little parasite just went, that's mine,
Oh my God, yeah.
Latched onto. So I was losing weight, and I didn't have any energy, and I didn't know what it was, and nor did the doctors. So, it kind of got to the stage where I had nothing left to give. I was already mentally pretty exhausted, and this was just like the final little nail in the coffin, which was my physical health. So yeah, again, look, in the end, it wasn't serious. I got rid of it when I came back to England. It was fine, but at the time, I just felt like I couldn't give anything more, and because I didn't understand what it was, nor did my employers. So what could they do for me? They couldn't really do anything for me, and I just found myself trying to kind of contain my energy in a very small little air-conditioned room, not even being with the chefs that I was supposed to be working with, and that's not where I wanted to be, and that's not where my employers wanted to be.
Oh my days, I've been working on something very special. Introducing the Hungry Sales Secrets Workshop. 14 unshakable challenger brand sales secrets that you'll never find on a Mars training program taught by Ian in beige chinos. I'm sorry, Ian. This is going to help your team creatively think outside the box to unlock more listings. Stop selling, start storytelling to actually get buyers on board with your brand. Stand out and be memorable versus every other account manager. I've used these secrets to unlock listings at Ocado, Whole Foods, Milk and More, Planet Organics, Selfridges, Crosstown Donuts, Booths, Harrods, Black Sheep Coffee, M&S, Harvey Nicks, loads of wholesalers. I use these same principles and secrets to turn Hungry from literally nothing in my parents' bedroom to my full-time gig through selling sponsorship. I've used the secrets to land guests I literally had no right to when I had like 313 followers. Julian Metcalf, Seth Godin, James Bailey, Roy Sutherland, tons more. Last year, I ran the workshop for Corson Press. They absolutely loved it. Next week, I'm running it for Vita Coco. If you want to take your sales team to another level, if you want to know my secrets, email me, alwayshungrydan@gmail.com. Yeah, and so when you get back to the UK, how does that suddenly fix it? Do they just have access to different...
I won't go into a lot of detail, it was, you go to the Tropical Disease Clinic, and the parasite is microscopic.
Yeah.
Once they find it, which it took them a few times to find it, you take a pill, it's gone.
Oh, as simple as that. It's not.
That's it.
I
Yeah.
thought it was like some sort of like
No.
X-ray.
No,
X-Men
that's why I
sort
say
of-
it's a pretty common thing. It's, you know, lots of people have had it. It's not the end of the world, but at the time it felt like I didn't really know what to do, like other than just try and get rid of it.
And but as you said it's almost like when you said you got pulled in good directions and bad directions when you were in Mumbai, and you said that was kind of like the nail in the coffin, I think.
Yeah.
You said, and it's like, right, it's time to go back.
Yeah.
So let's revert back. And what were some of the really good places you got pulled to when you were out there? And
I mean, arriving there, you know, I mean, people tell you before, because it's the first time I've ever gone to India.
right.
So I moved there when I was 24 to live in a brand new country by myself, doing a job that was, you know, perhaps I was premature in taking it, or I mean, I don't look back at it like that, but I was relatively inexperienced. So people tell you when you go to India, beware of the culture shock. So it wasn't a big issue for me, really, because I was so like open and excited about what was going to happen. I was like a little bit tired of London, and I was up for a new challenge. So when I arrived in this new place, I loved it. I thought, this is great, and it's crazy and chaotic and very different to what I knew. But I was pretty happy. You know, I was given a little apartment in South Bombay that was not too far from the restaurant. The restaurant hadn't been built, despite what I'd been told before I got there. So it was still rubble, but then my team was there and their chef whites ready to go. And they were very welcoming and made me feel very much at home. And I was involved in, you know, that kind of creative process of picking out the crockery and choosing menus and design elements of building a restaurant, which again was very exciting. And obviously being put in this new city, this vibrant, bustling city with my employers who were pretty kind of well known in the Mumbai restaurant nightlife scene. So I would say they took me under their wing. They made me feel very welcome. And at the beginning, I remember really enjoying it. I documented the whole thing, and it's in a diary, and you could see from my writing, it starts with that feeling of like excitement and possibly naivety to the whole experience, and then you see my mood gradually declining.
We'll get onto that because I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
But what pulled you specifically to that, there in that restaurant, and why out of any cuisine you could, like, what pulled you before you got there, like to that type of Indian cooking? And
It wasn't Indian, so it was European cooking.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
No.
yeah.
So it was European food in Mumbai. So I'd done my stint in London, or at least the beginning of it. I'd learned really the basics in French
So
cookery.
I didn't realise that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and they approached me through a consultant, and they wanted me to go over there to run their new European kitchen, which was kind of like an outpost of their very established Indian kitchen that was below the restaurant that I was working in. So
Okay, with you.
it was
Yeah.
they were associated with, it was the owners of Kaiba, who are the oldest, I think one of the oldest Indian restaurants in Bombay, but I was to run their European restaurant upstairs. So that was it, and my reaction was, that's not something I would have even thought about doing. Running a restaurant, let alone going to India to run a restaurant. But, you know, I felt that, you know, if it didn't go well, you just fly
Come
home.
back.
Just come home.
Yeah, I love
So-
that. And then you said, so there was some really, you know, the cultural shock and the writings in the diary to begin with, really kind of full of kind of jubilant, exciting experiences.
Yeah.
Could you kind of add some texture to that period of time? Is there like a specific kind of story or moment as you got there? Maybe it was like going into the kitchen for the first time, or that really showed you getting pulled into good places, and then we can explore the negative and how you got back to London.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, everyone was very welcoming, and it felt very exciting. You know, I was in amongst this kind of new group of people whose attitude was like, you know, whatever you want, we can make it happen, kind of thing. Whether that's going to a restaurant and going out with their friends or, picking stuff for the restaurant, whatever you want, you can have kind of that's what I felt it was like. Which for a young guy was pretty exciting. And if you've been to Mumbai or any city in India, really, it's like it's relentlessly busy and bustling and exciting, and it's definitely a 24-hour city. There is something going on at every single hour of the day and night. So, you become you get very drawn in by that whole experience. And this, for the first time in my life, I was like about to run this restaurant, and as a result, my sleep suffered. So mainly because of good things, right? I was trying to think of menus, and so that's not necessarily a negative thing, but I did find myself walking around the city at 6 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. And even that, you see some good things, you see some bad things, but look, it's an incredibly fascinating city that has boundless potential. And at the beginning, that's how it felt, and it felt very exciting, and everyone was very nice. And it was also a bit surprising because I had, suddenly I had a team of about 20 chefs who, then that was a new thing for me.
And you were incredibly young at this time.
Yeah.
Like, were you early 20s?
I was 24, yeah.
Which is like considerably younger than what you'd be doing in London at
and
that
probably
age.
not experienced enough to take on a job like that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they didn't know that.
Yeah. Smile and wave as you walk through the door. It's all good.
And so that was a bit odd, having all these chefs, like, I guess, look up to me in because I was in charge of them, but they were amazing as well. So I loved my team. They were like, all they wanted to do was do good by me and the restaurant, and they worked so hard, and they were a big bonus in making me feel incredibly welcome and helping me settle and really helping me get that restaurant off the ground. So yeah, I mean, it was just a wonderful set of people who, like I said, made me feel very welcome, and it was very exciting.
How did you? Because I interviewed Jack Stein the other week, and he was saying this thing about how one chef had said to him, he was starting out, and he said instead of doing like a small service, he goes, right, just go right into the deep end, and that's how you'll find out whether you can do it or not. And he's like, fuck it, I did it, and I could do it. You're 24, as you said, you're almost slightly in London, kind of inexperienced, but in a good thing. You had kind of that naivety.
Yeah.
How did you go in and kind of, considering you didn't have that experience getting that authority in the kitchen over here, how did you go in and, without anyone kind of guiding you, say, right, this is how we're going to do things? Because I think in life, one of my favourite quotes is like, bite off more than you can chew than chew like hell. It's like...
It's probably a bit of that.
Yeah, the founder of Minor Figures taught me that, and I used it a lot. I'm like, fuck it, just go for it.
Yeah.
How did you... do that? Do you know what I mean?
Well, that was sort of my attitude with the whole experience. I do believe, more so now than ever, that you put yourself out of your comfort zone and you will learn something. And the reality is, cricket wouldn't necessarily exist in the form that it does had I not gone to India. I would have never turned to Indian food. So I think putting yourself out of your comfort zone is very important. The guys in my team in the kitchen, they gave me confidence because they thought I knew everything, which I didn't. But they did what I told them to do, and I guess part of it was like winging it, and part of it was like the hopeful belief that, okay, I am here. They did trial me to get here, so maybe I can do it. Although I never think I am good enough, right? And that's true to this day. Whenever I see people eat my food, my first thought is they hate it. They really don't. So like, when people react, they're like, that could be good, that could be bad. I always think it's bad until I hear that it's good. So I guess, you have to believe in yourself. I had to believe in myself, and I think I did, but there was definitely a feeling of, I really need to try and make this work, because I'm not like 100% sure I can do this. But then surely that's the case with most things.
So yeah, I think someone said to me, it's like every founder has this equal balance of messiah versus imposter complex. So
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah. The
messiah is
imposter
I can do
yeah.
whatever I can do it,
Yeah.
versus the imposter, and I'm the same with this. It's like, oh, what am I doing? But if you have too much messiah, then you think you kind of indestructible.
Yeah.
But too much imposter, you can't do anything.
I definitely have the imposter thing. Not so much the messiah thing, I don't think. But yeah, I'm sure it's a balance, isn't it? And sometimes you need to reset yourself. So when you're especially when you're trying to create things, there are times where you get blocks and you have to reset yourself. You have to take a step back, and that's when you lose confidence in yourself, and that's where perhaps the imposter syndrome then kicks in, and you have to kind of reset. That happens quite a lot.
So when was the last time that kind of happened?
Oh, very recently, in the last few weeks.
Really?
Yeah, and most of it nowadays is coming up with new menus. I came back from India in January, after a trip in January, and had a head full of ideas, and then changed virtually the entire menu and felt very good about everything. And after a few weeks, you're like, okay, I need to change things up a little bit again, keep it moving, and then the ideas stop, and all it takes is just a very quick, clean break whereby you might read a book, or you might chance upon something, a new idea or whatever it may be, and then suddenly you're on a bit of a roll, and now I feel back where I'm comfortable, but it'll happen again.
That's the thing, because I listen back to all of these podcasts, and sometimes I listen back to it as I'm listening for like notes and stuff like that, and sometimes I'm just like, that is fucking awful. Like, I'm just telling myself the most nefarious things. Just that, don't even bother. But then sometimes I'm like, oh, it's okay. So all that's actually all right, mate. But then in terms of, I suppose I'm asking this selfishly. So when you have these big kind of gushings of imposter syndrome, all those feelings of like, this isn't going anywhere, it's not working. What are some of the ways to like reset will? Like, how do you do that? You said you read a book. Like, how do you get the ideas back? Try
and regain inspiration from somewhere and ideas. I mean, that's really where it comes from. Ultimately, my role has developed as time has gone on within Kricket or my life or whatever it may be, but trying to remember what got me here in the first place, which is cooking.
Yeah.
And also just trying to keep moving forward with that. One of the main reasons why I wanted to do something with Indian food was because it has the endless possibility of evolution within the formation of what you're making. It's forever evolving, I think. It has an incredibly rich culture and history, and that allows you to kind of, I hope, to take it further. And so the possibilities are endless. It's just about staying focused and trying to make sure that ultimately what you're serving and what you're putting on the menu in front of customers is the right thing. So just resetting is really trying to like be inspired.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like when the curiosity can almost get you out of that slump.
Yeah. It's very easy to do, but it's also very easy not to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Has there ever been a period when you've kind of stayed in that too long?
Yeah, I'm sure there has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked about kind of the cultural shock right at the beginning. What was it that shocked you when you got there that you kind of didn't expect? You leave Heathrow or Gatwick, wherever, and you're on the plane. What was it that really shocked you in terms of, oh, I just wasn't expecting this? Do you know what I mean? Because I think that can happen in so many places you go to.
It's as you're about to land into Mumbai.
Right.
You start flying over a sea of blue, and that's tarpaulin over the slums, and that's like, okay, this is something I've never seen before, because the airport is virtually surrounded by. They've smartened it up a little bit now, but. That's the first thing you notice when you fly into Mumbai, and then when you come out of the airport in a car, it's also what you see, and so that's new, and that's immediately difficult to like see, and Mumbai is very much a city of major disparity between wealth. There is the incredibly rich and the incredibly poor, and you can kind of see them all everywhere you look.
Is it segregated like in
No.
terms of like South Africa's, or is it more like, because
No,
London's
above-
kind of, it's all mixed, muddled in.
Below every skyscraper, there's a slum. Probably not every single one, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's wild.
You can see the extremes everywhere, I think,
Yeah.
and that's quite difficult because you're kind of hoping it meets in the middle somewhere, and people aren't so rich and people aren't so poor, but that's the reality of that city then and now, I think. So that was the first impression, and that was like, okay, you wasn't necessarily expecting that.
Is there anything else that shocked you? Anything else that like shocked you from when your time?
The sheer density of people, the traffic, those are the first things that took me back. You know, I was like, it took me a long time to get a very short distance to my apartment. But yeah, it was like I said, despite all of that, you know, because people say, oh, it's a shock. You go in with that knowing it will be, and it is very exciting. And for those first few months, it was great. Yeah.
And then with you said like in your diary you had all these like really positive emotions. How did it begin to? I think right at the beginning you said you got pulled into some bad places as well. How did your diary kind of change? And then what was the kind of catalyst to say like, right, I need to get back to London?
Yeah, it was two things really. It was frustration in trying to manage myself with this new environment that I was in. So sometimes in India, not everything is completely simple and straightforward. So if you say something needs to be done, it's not always done. It's not always the case, but
Well, I mean, everywhere, kind of.
Yeah,
or like,
yeah.
Yeah, like a cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you know, you ask someone a question and it's sometimes you get a yes, no, maybe in response, you know, and that's that can be easily very frustrating. You know, I was told the restaurant would be ready before I got there, so I rushed out there and it wasn't. It was a rubble, mud, lots of mud. So you know, not everything is as it seems. It's chaotic and it's challenging. It's never like, for me, Mumbai was never just relaxed and sort of medium, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was either like intensely chaotic. In fact, that was really all it was. And my kind of form of escape was to shut myself in my four walls in my apartment and just breathe, because the noise is constant.
Really?
The car horns are constant. The moment you're out of your door, you're hit with a wall of heat and lots of people. So that's really challenging. And then, you know, on top of that, I had an unfortunate experience whereby I sort of had a stalker who at first robbed me and then threatened me with you know, my life and stuff.
As in, like, was it?
It was in an ATM next to my house, next to my flat, and he was.
Crime rate big there?
No.
Like, it's not like a Colombia or Brazil. It's not
No. I was
notorious.
very unlucky,
That's
and
wild.
anyone who's listening to this, don't let it put you off going there, because I was very unlucky. I just had a guy who probably saw this like young white kid on his own and thought, let's see what I can get out of him, and he got a bit of money out of me, and he was also told a few fibs to the security guards who let them up to my apartment. So look, that's a very long story, but it went on for days, and it eventually got him arrested.
Wild.
But the result of it was me feeling incredibly insecure in this new environment. This guy now knows where I live, and you know, I'd been threatened on several occasions, and at the time when it happened, I was sort of ended up in the middle of the street shouting for help from whoever.
Yeah.
And things just seemed to conspire against me at that stage, and no one seemed to really help, until eventually I, you know, got to work and they helped me find him, and he was a well-known criminal, and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I guess that made me feel very unhappy, very like unsafe. I was always looking over my shoulder. I kind of knew where he hung out, because even though he was arrested, he was obviously let go. And, I knew where he was. He knew where I was, and that made me feel pretty unhappy where I lived. And I ended up living there for another year.
Even with this learning this bloke's about.
Yeah. And
what made you stay? Like, that shows. Yeah.
I didn't get a massive. I didn't get a huge amount of understanding, and I was contracted into this apartment.
Right. Yeah.
Eventually, after a year, I managed to go and live with some friends in another part of town, and then things improved again. But yeah, it was a combination that really took a toll. That was like had the biggest impact on my happiness and on my security, and I felt like I couldn't turn to anyone, even though probably I could have done. And that was kind of scary. And like I said, I was very unlucky, but it did happen. And so that, coupled with the frustrations of general life there, it was, wore me out. And that's when things started to become a little bit difficult. But then I didn't want to give up. So I was like, you got to stick this out.
Yeah. Mate, what a wild, beautiful story. Like, not horrible, like harrowing story, but like the way that's gone kind of full circle. And I suppose then, like, you're working in this European restaurant out there. I suppose you're going to different places and trying all the different Indian cuisine. Like, at what point does Kricket begin to ideate in your head?
Yeah.
Is that when you're out there? Is it when you're back?
No, it's when that's the exciting bit. Despite this, like, that was a year of my relatively new life in a new place that was fairly majorly hampered. But what was exciting, and as part of that, I was cooking European food for a new audience, and their interpretation of European food was somewhat different to mine. I had an idea of doing like a small French seasonal menu, and that was widened and elongated to the point where I had a pretty big menu of stuff that I didn't necessarily want to cook. So I became fairly disinterested in what I was doing myself. But on the positive side of things, I was becoming really interested in Indian food. And again, if you've been there, you know that everywhere you look, there is something different to try on every street corner. And it's the smells and the colors. It's incredibly exciting. And at that point, I can't remember exactly when it was. I remember roughly, but there was a point where I was like, there is so much more to Indian food than I know, and perhaps what others know as well in England. So I at that point, I wanted to try and showcase more of Indian food to the UK audience. And that was where the idea behind, didn't have a name yet, a concept, which later became Kricket, started.
And then what is the difference because were you going around the different cities and like areas, and trying the different, like, how did you, I suppose, get Will's kind of literal appetite to go and try everything? I always find it interesting how you like try everything and then you bring things together and then put your mark on it. Like, what's the difference between the different types of food in the different parts of India?
I didn't manage to travel a huge amount when I lived there. I was there to work.
Yeah.
And I was working chef hours, so really I was mostly in Mumbai. But there's plenty of food to discover in Mumbai. It's a real melting pot of it's the cosmopolitan hub of India. So you've got a lot of people traveling there to work and so that results in very interesting food as well. So you can get a lot of regional Indian food in Mumbai, more so than ever now, I think. So the occasional trip to Goa and stuff like that was great, and Delhi, but there was enough to get me going really there in Mumbai to really understand that, there's so much to learn here. And I guess what I wanted to do is combine my knowledge, which was classical French cookery, with an understanding, some understanding of ingredients and seasonality and that kind of stuff. With Indian food, and so that's kind of where it started. And I started writing recipes and not recipes, actually menus. Should have started with recipes, but I actually didn't have enough knowledge on Indian food. So I found myself trying to cook at every opportunity something out of my kitchen, and I found some kitchens to work in and to experiment and explore. But really, again, with Indian food, you have to know the basics. It's certainly not a cuisine you can just wing.
What are some of the basics of? Because I think I read somewhere like there's people get things wrong about spice, like it's about layering. I read that in one of the articles.
There's a lot, yeah.
What are some of those, just out of curiosity, like basics?
I mean, the very basics I would say would be the treatment of your spices, whether they're whole or they're powdered, and the temperature in which you cook them will result in various results. And at what stage you put them into your cooking also defines the result. Cooking of your onions is very important, and that varies massively throughout the different curries that you're cooking.
What does the onions do to the sorry, I'm just having.
Yeah.
Why is that so essential?
So you got to be patient with onions.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of water content, you need to let that release, and I don't know. Generally, like the darker you caramelize your onions, the better it's suited towards, let's say, a heavier meat curry. Lighter, translucent cooking of onions will lend itself better generally to fish curries because it's lighter and less impactful. But then quite often you'll fry onions, you'll reserve them, and you'll apply them to the dish later on in the form of a paste, or you can imagine a paste of fried onions is very sweet and intense. So I think onions are very important to Indian cookery, and each curry lends itself to a different kind of way in which you approach them, I think. So onions and spices probably more important and very much unique to Indian food in some respects. But yeah, those two things.
And then
are
when
good
you
to
say
start.
it can keep, like, you thought it's like can endlessly keep evolving. I think we said that a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Like, because is it 9 years? When was it? 2015?
2015, yeah.
Yeah, so that's that's wild.
Yeah, nearly 10 years.
Yeah, that's mad.
Yeah.
Like, how has Kricket evolved, like, over those...
Yeah.
Yeah, how have you constantly pushed the envelope? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the food, I mean, we have, like I said, kind of touched on earlier, there are some dishes that have been on since day one, and they're signatures, and they'll probably stay on. But the rest of the menu is something that we're constantly working on, evolving, and that's through learning and trying new things. Simple as that, really. I mean, there are certain dishes that I've had on in the past that I look back and I think, hell was that?
Such as?
Oh, I mean, there's like one in the beginning in the shipping container that was like this vindaloo bavette, which was like just steak with. I discovered that the three main properties of vindaloo was, or four: vinegar, chili, salt, and garlic, and I applied that to like some sort of chimichurri. It was just like ill-conceived and not properly thought out. That's something you've got to be very careful about, particularly as like a white boy cooking Indian food, right? People will be quick to judge, and quite rightly. I accept that. It's an incredibly precious cuisine that should be like nurtured and preserved, and the last thing I want to do is to disrespect that in any way. So that's what I'm trying to do is like develop it and showcase it amongst some new ingredients and a new style and push it forward a little bit. So you have to put some thought into these dishes and understand where they've come from to understand where you want them to go. and you're not always going to get it right, and there'll be dishes in the future that I won't be happy with. But as long as you've put enough thought into it, the intention is there, then that's quite important to me. But in terms of Kricket as well, it's not all about the food. As a business, it's evolved and obviously in a hell of a lot in the last 10 years.
The one thing I want to ask you, some sort of like, it's just questions that I've been curious about for ages, is with, it's quite, well, I've only been to one in Brixton, right, but it's quite dark. Why do you think eating Indian food in like a darker, or your food in a darker setting works? The reason I'm asking this, I interviewed Margot Henderson last week, and we were talking about Rochelle Canteen and how light it is.
Yeah. And
she was saying she wants that kind of feeling of, she would describe her hospitality as kind of, what's the word? What did she say? Gentle. Yep. That was one thing she said. I'd love to kind of explore this with you, mate, of like, why do you think it's kind of, I like the darkness of it with the train roaring over your head, and the incense. Why does that work?
Well, I think it's partly situational. I think our restaurants are quite different. Each one you go to, the experience is hopefully a Kricket experience, but Brixton, exactly what you said. You're in an arch under a railway line. Light is limited already, so and where you are, you need to kind of feel what's right in that building. And I think when you do a restaurant, okay, you have your concept and you know what food you want to produce, but equally you need to adapt to the room that you're going into. And I think for Brixton, it suits it quite well. I also think that a nice softly lit room when you're eating is a nicer way to eat than any kind of harsh light. And harsh light's different to bright light. Bright light is when you have the fortune of having lots of natural light through your window, which is a wonderful thing. But if you don't have that, and I imagine you would have gone in the evening to Brixton, you need the help of a candle.
It was last week. It was still light, but it's got for me it's the roar over the head of the train. It adds like a huge.
We like quite unassuming spaces sometimes. I think that's quite an unassuming space. The Brixton site. It's right in the middle. It's where the village meets the market, but. It's a nice atmosphere, I think, and I think the train kind of adds to that. Really, it's what, Sorry.
So what I liked what you said there, Will, is you have same Kricket experience, different sites. So, or different. You go into a space, you're like, we need to make this work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of understand the way your brain works in this regard. So you go in to say, maybe we can use like White City as an example.
Yep.
Like, how is that different from Brixton, but how do you still get that kind of Kricket feeling when a consumer leaves or a customer leaves? Yeah,
I mean it's a lot big. It's much bigger space. It's got the advantage of a terrace, and the terrace overlooks the iconic BBC television centre. So already you've got quite a different feel about the space. It's a lot more generous, and maybe somewhat elaborate, even though it's not really elaborate. We're not elaborate. We're a casual dining experience, really. But there's certain nuances within the design that make you realise that yes, it's still Kricket, and within the food, hopefully you can see it's still Kricket. But it's got a little bit of a different feel. Just like if you went to Soho, it's more of that kind of counter dining, fast, bustling, sort of intimate, fast-paced service, which I think is quite typical of Soho. You need to understand where you're going. You need to know what your customer base is, and you kind of adapt the way you design things around that. And now with every new restaurant that we build, wherever it may be, we want them all to look different. Again, you want to know you're in a Kricket, but at the same time, we want every experience to be slightly different. And we certainly want the visually, aesthetically, it to each site to have their independence amongst the group.
I am absolutely over the bloody moon that Big Fish, yes, Big Fish, the big dons of Challenger Food and Drink brand design. I mean, Perry is an absolute legend. He's designed every Challenger brand in your cupboard. Charlie Bigham's, Goo, Tyrrell's, Rana, Clipper Tea. The list is endless. And Big Fish are looking to speak to the next wave of Challenger Food and Drink brands who are a force for good. They're looking to invest in brands, and we've got this sick thing coming next year that you do not want to miss out on. If you want to speak to Big Fish, if you want to go to the Fish Bowl, drop me a DM and I can make it happen. North Star, get listed, say listed, and grow. Do you actually know your shopper? If you don't know your shopper, you're literally pissing and spunking money up the wall. Knowing your shopper is the secret weapon to unlock more grocery listings and more stores. But not knowing your shopper is literally like driving in the dark, hungover, without a sat-nav, in a thunderstorm, in February with 5 miles of petrol in the tank. But knowing your shopper is like having a sat-nav. A full tank of petrol. It's a glorious sunny day. You're listening to the Sugar Babes and you've got a fresh, hot, pumpkin spice latte by your side. North Star Illuminator is the shopper map to the promised land of growth and success. It does 3 wonderful things for your brand. 1, make your marketing budget sweat. When you've got lucid, crystal clarity on exactly where each precious penny is going, you know how to drive loyalty with existing customers or even bring new shoppers into your brand. Numero 2, what's actually driving performance? Do you actually know why your sales are going up and down? You need to know, like, are you bringing new shoppers into the category? Is that driving growth? Are loyal customers buying more of your brand? Are shoppers switching in and out of your brand versus other brands? I mean, Perfect Head's a glorious example. They are bringing new shoppers into sports and energy. They are so incremental versus, say, chocolate bars, where people just switch in and out of brands all the time. The more you know this, the more oomph you've got with your buyer when you go to do a marketing plan, a joint business plan with retailers. The buyers want to know how incremental you are to the category. That is your passport to success. North Star is your passport. And what you can do is you can literally see it by channel, by retailer, get so specific. If you're looking to go to the next level, honestly, get in touch with North Star and go to the promised land.
It's quite important.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And then with I've just always found, as soon as I saw the brand, like, why the Kricket, why the K, like that, it just instantly was like, that to me, visually, I don't know what it was, I was like, that's works. Like, what was talk me behind that process?
Well, I mean, that was my business partner, Rick. He came up with the name. He's quite good at that. He's despite the fact that I'm supposed to be the creative one, he seems to come up with the names.
Yeah.
We were thinking, you know, when we decided to do this together, we then thought, okay, we need to think of a name. And he came up with Kricket. And basically, we wanted a word that resonated between the UK and India. And cricket was a sport that we created and they then mastered. And it kind of felt like it tied the two countries quite nicely together. But equally, we didn't want it to look like a sports bar. So we removed the C and put a K in there. And it was that's it, really. But we felt, after designing the typography of the K and the Kricket, once we were happy with that, we felt like the K was quite strong.
Yeah, the K's so strong.
And so that's something that we've kept. You know, brand identity and your identity, it develops as you go on, and you need to update it, and whilst remaining true to why you created it in the first place. But I think the K has remained pretty consistent throughout the journey.
So take me to the day. It's the first day. You're at the shipping container. It's in Brixton, right? So you've come back from India. You've spoken to Rick. You've gone into business together. Like, how did you sell him on that, or who did? What was the?
Oh, we had a coffee, and we just said, let's do it. It's 50-50. That was it.
Easy peasy.
Just a little verbal agreement. And he at the time was working in the city. He's an accountant. He was an accountant, sorry. And it's something I could never do. And I'm very bad at maths, which is why. It was and I was trying to learn more about Indian food. So I went to work with Vivek Singh in Cinnamon, and we were just waiting for the right opportunity. And that presented itself when Brixton came around, and they were looking for tenants to go into their shipping containers. And, you know, had it not been for that, we would have we were trying to find a site, and as two new kids on the, who really were going into it for the first time and didn't have any funding and didn't have any experience running restaurants or anything like that. Pop Brixton was the perfect platform because we built the place ourselves. We put a kitchen down one end and a couple of tables. We painted the walls. It cost very little. It was our money. It was our business. It was ours to lose. And if we had lost it, it would have been okay. We would have gone and done something else and started again. Which you can't, is not quite the same as necessarily if you spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on fitting out a bricks and mortar. So that was very good for us, and it worked.
And how many seats was in?
20.
20.
Yeah.
And then what's the feeling like in here once the first day, the first service?
Yeah.
Like, and how are you getting people in? Like, I think people don't really talk about that as much. Like, we're 10 years down the line now. You've got three amazing restaurants.
Yeah.
Three?
Three.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me about that early period.
Well, I mean, for the first, we had a table of 4 who were my parents and Rick's parents
Happy days.
in at around like 5 or 5:30, which was lovely, and that's a special way to start. And they sat together and they had the menu and they said they liked it. They had to say that, so that was nice. And then I think we did about 50 covers the first night in a 20-seater restaurant, and that it was mostly friends, I remember it very well. I was in the kitchen with one other. We didn't have a bar, so the bar was in the kitchen. We didn't have a KP either. So it was like 4 of us in a tiny, tiny space. Rick on the floor, and just winged it. We didn't even have table numbers. We had nothing. We were just like, right, let's go. And it was, I think it went well. But your friends are going to tell you that, but I think it did, and but quickly we understood that we have to learn very, very fast about a lot in order to make this work. It's like
What were the things you had to learn super?
Well,
that was just like, oh god, I wish I knew that before we'd
just systems. Like, it's all very well like cooking food and putting it on a plate and giving it to the person in front of you. That's fine, but you need a POS system to make that happen. You need a kitchen porter. You need like waste management. You need to print the menus. You need to. There's so many things that go into it. There's so many different. So we were working constantly, which is what you have to do. But we're still learning as we go. Every challenge that presents itself, you learn something from, and that is a wonderful thing about what we do. It's you are always learning, but certainly in those early days, you're learning the basics, and you've got to learn them fast because the next day you've got to do it all again, and the next. So. Yeah, it's exciting.
It's almost like that experience of going to Mumbai and going into that kitchen when you're like 24 and just biting off more than you can chew, chewing like hell.
Yeah.
Like when you've got to that site in Brixton, you said, fuck it, we'll do the same thing. And I think there's something interesting in that.
Yeah.
And that kind of like winging it kind of thing.
Yeah.
I read, I was doing some research this morning, and it was a bit serendipitous. So there's the picture on your website. I think I don't know if it's you, but there's like an illustration of someone on a motorbike.
Yeah, it's
it is you, and there's like the palatial thing in the background.
Yeah.
And I'm moving house, and there's this book that which I was told to read at uni. I didn't actually read it, but I thought it came up. I was like, okay, then maybe I'll ask this and explore it. I like to explore some weird things. And the book's called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Yeah.
Really interesting book. But he talks about, and I looked at this online, and he talks about how you're trying to find Zen in quite potentially like chaotic things. I'd love to know, when being in a kitchen and being in kind of a high octane environment, a bit like a motorbike, is there any kind of, what's the feeling you'll get? Is there like a form of Zen, or like, not necessarily Zen, but like presence? Like what's that feeling like when you're in this crazy kitchen, whether it's in Mumbai, or under some of your mentors or in cricket? Like, what's that feeling?
Depends how it's going. Like, it's completely dependent on how that service is going. When you do a good service and you're busy and everything clicks and there's a rhythm to it, there's no better feeling. It's like, it's wonderful. And, you know, whether it's in the shipping container or any kitchen, any chef would agree, particularly find in Soho where you got the customers in front of you. You look down the line and your team are working hard and everything is flowing very nicely, and you're focused and there's a rhythm and a flow to what you're doing, and it's very exciting, and I love that, and I miss that because I don't do that very much anymore.
So is it almost like a kind of
it's a buzz. It's
like a buzz, but like it's almost like a band playing like in unison, or like a football. Like, is that kind of, that's the sort of flow?
It's definitely a team exercise, right? It's certainly not all about you. It's about everyone in the team contributing and being on it, because one person slips and it's a bit of a domino effect, and that's when things aren't so fun. So when things don't go so well, sometimes you'll just have a day where it's not running smoothly for whatever reason. You're not on the ball, or someone in the kitchen's not on the ball, and still you have the pressure of all these checks flying through and customers sitting in front of you, and it's not going well, and then something happens. That's really unpleasant. So like, it's two extremes. It's like, it's a wonderful feeling of like the rush of a fantastic service, to like the anxiety and just disorganization of a terrible service. That's really awful, and you've got to keep it together.
How do you do how? Because I'm someone I worry about things a lot, and like if something's going wrong, I'm like panic a bit. Like, how do you, through enough experience, like how do you stay calm, as you said, and then bring that kind of that rhythm and that rhyme back? And do you know what I mean? Like, it's really interesting from a leadership perspective.
So you obviously all of our kitchens are open, so there's no shouting, or at least there shouldn't be. So if you need to really hammer home a point to someone, then you do it quietly and seriously and in a corner, which I think sometimes is more intimidating to people. But really, you know, you've got to keep your cool. And sometimes, in order to do that, you need to duck down by the hot cupboard, you know, and take deep breaths, or just duck behind in the KP area and just take a second, because, you know, sometimes when the pressure is really building up and the checks are piling up, and the best thing you think you might do is just keep going, and you have to rebuild momentum and get back to where you were. But sometimes you need to take a step back in order to get there and just regain some sort of calm. I think that's very important. So almost do the opposite of what you naturally might think you should do, which is speed up. You slow down and then regain some sort of consciousness and then go again.
There's a quote I love, which I don't adhere to really, but it's slow is smooth is fast.
Yeah.
I think when you slow things down, and then how do you rebuild the, is it once you slow down, like how are you, with all the checks that are coming in, like how's that make it all go Pete Tong, if that makes sense? Do you know what I mean? In terms of not just boshing through them.
Yeah, well, when I say slow down, you do it for a few seconds, you know.
Right.
And then you just take a deep breath. But it's really about rhythm, and it's about then catching up. And sometimes you need to have a little pep talk with the team to get them back into the, you know, into focus, and then just catching up. But like I said, whether you're in a good or a bad service, if you or someone else slips up, then you're playing catch up, and that's very difficult. You have to stay on top of things. But it's, you know, it's very exciting. It's very fun and tiring.
I want to talk. I read somewhere that you said we have egoless kitchens.
Yeah.
I love that as a concept. How do you? I suppose the first question is like, how do you? Because a lot of people can wear masks in life, like quite literally in terms of how they present themselves. Like, how do you create an environment where ego doesn't exist? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there are lots of kitchens that perhaps do have egos in them, and you know, chefs come in all shapes and sizes, right? But you know, people are aware of those chefs who are boisterous and shouty and perhaps do have egos, and just really, it's not that we're necessarily trying to promote kitchens, egoless kitchens. We are, but at the same time, if a chef comes into the kitchen with an ego, they just don't last long. You know, it's just not the environment that we want. We want to create a kind of a nice, friendly, calm, nurturing environment. You know, cooking, being a professional chef is, or any, you know, front of house, back of house, being in hospitality is a challenging profession. Long hours, it's tiring, it's etc. You need to try and create an environment where people are happy. Otherwise, the turnover is too relentless. It shows in the food that you're producing. It's not conducive to a happy environment. And I'm sure lots of people try and say the same. And I'm sure we haven't always got it right. You know, like probably some ex-employers will be like, well, I didn't like working at Kricket, but you know, it's what we try and do. And so if someone does come in with an ego, they just don't really last that long.
What did you you said there about kind of employees coming and going? I read, what I loved on your website is, I think the guy's name's bear with me, mate.
Monsef?
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like joined in 2016. So he's been with you for like a long time.
Yeah.
Started as bar manager, now group beverage manager.
Yep.
What did you get right that's made, the first kind of question, that's made him stay with you for so long? And then when you talked about some people who've come and gone, like, what do you think some of the mistakes you've made, which is, you know, where you said, you know, oh, someone would be sitting listening to this saying, oh, Kricket wasn't the best place to work. I just think it's an interesting dichotomy to explore.
Yeah. I mean, so I think 20% of our workforce has been with us for five or more years.
That's mad.
You know, whether it's Will, who's head of beverage, or Monsef, who's head of people, Ali, who's head of marketing. You know, our entire head office and most of our head chefs and a lot of our chefs and a lot of people have been with us for a long time. So I think that shows that hopefully they're happy and they're motivated. And I think in keeping those people with you, you need to show them some sort of career progression. You know, that you know, they all started as something, to what they're and where they are now is different to where they started. And I think that's useful with growing a company as well. New opportunities arise for those that have showed loyalty and commitment, and you know, if they're capable, they will always get the opportunity ahead of someone fresh coming in. So yeah, I think keeping them motivated, career progression is incredibly important. And to those that have come and gone, to be honest, I think our retention rate is pretty good. The type of people that you are having coming to work for you has changed over the last 10 years massively. You know, since COVID changed the landscape of your workforce in so many respects. So those that haven't lasted, I mean, I think probably a lot of them, you know, hospitality is a you fill a gap quite often. You know, you want to achieve something else, but you want a bit of money, so you go and work a few shifts on the floor or whatever, or you go into a kitchen thinking that's what you want to do, and the reality of kitchen life isn't maybe quite what you wanted it to be. So, you know, lots of people have had lots of different experiences, but I think you know, I'm very proud of the culture that we've created in the company, and it's something that we're constantly working on, and we will keep working on. You can't stay still, and we have an HR department that are doing a fantastic job, and are massively responsible for creating that culture. It comes from the top down, and I really hope we look after people very well, I think.
And then what would you say are some of the... I think you have to make mistake, like part of the evolution in terms of this Egoless. 20% of your team have been there for longer than 5 years. Like you get to that point through mistakes, because mistakes are great in terms of learning. Like, what would you say are some of the mistakes you've made to get you to this really strong place in terms of really kind of ironclad culture now?
Mistakes. I mean, you're always making mistakes. No bad thing, right? Like I said, the landscape has changed, and people's attitude towards working has changed quite a lot. So you have to adapt to that. That's not necessarily a mistake. I don't know what specifically what mistakes.
When you say it's changed, like how so? The attitude to work's changed. I mean,
well, like COVID shut people away for a while, and people learned they could work from home, and then a lot of people who returned to their countries, and people who would have been working for you, and I would say the local talent pool shrunk somewhat, but restaurants were still opening, so it became very difficult to hire for a while. Having said that, also people became accustomed to sort of working on days that they wanted to work on, whether it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
So
working from home, and
you
can't work from home if you're in hospitality, and so it hasn't been so much of an issue. We just had to adapt, and you're paying people more money now. That's the thing. But I guess one thing that has helped us is we sponsor people from abroad now. So we're bringing over a lot of chefs from India, which is
amazing.
Which for me, I'm incredibly proud of, because they are young and keen and excited and ready for this challenge, and so that's really exciting. But yeah, the landscape has changed, and I think recruitment in hospitality has always been challenging. Mm-hmm. It's a fickle industry. And I say that as someone who's been fickle in the past. My attitude towards cooking was you learn as much as you can in one place, and then you move on. And that happens to the detriment of the employer sometimes. But I'd like to think that I encourage my team to hold that same idea, because if I feel like it's time for one of them, particularly the chefs, to go on to a new challenge, then you must encourage that to happen. I think it's very important for personal development and growth.
I want to talk about two chefs, and I may have butchered their names, right? So the pronunciation of it. So Roly Lee.
Yep.
That's
correct.
Right. Yeah, bang, sweet. That's the tick. And then Vivek Singh. So So you went to work for both of them. I think was it Roly first.
Roly was before India.
Yeah, before India.
Yeah.
And I think I read somewhere that you said like you didn't. It was an intense, scary environment. You didn't speak like for a year. I read that somewhere. I'd love to know what's the difference. Like, they've both shaped Will, who sat in front of me today. Like, how's their approach to like? Yeah, how's their approach like different, and like how's it shaped you as a chef? Do you know what I mean? I'd love to maybe start with Roly first.
Roly's kitchen was an incredibly nice, nurturing kitchen. It wasn't scary, but I thought it was. So I was I guess I was completely inexperienced.
How old are you at this point? Like,
I started fresh out of university, like 21, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
So I was this kind of posh kid thrown into this kitchen, and these other guys probably looked at me and thought, "You're not going to last long." So I was scared.
Yes.
But the environment that I was in was wonderful. It was I was thrown in on the deep end on the vegetable section at Christmas. It was very intense, and for a year I didn't really talk much, because I felt like I really had to prove myself to myself, prove I could do it, prove myself to these great chefs around me, and to keep your head down and absorb and learn and work hard. And that's the advice I would give to any young chef starting out: get into the kitchen and do exactly that, and hope you pull through, and learn as much as you can. And I learned a huge amount in that place, and I'm still in touch with a lot of the chefs who taught me, and I'm very grateful for that.
What made you so you finished uni, and then what did you do at uni?
Oh, business management.
Yeah, that's what I did as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. No, offense, but I was like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I didn't
do that.
I didn't do very well, but I knew I wanted to be a chef.
So you knew that since day dot, and uni was kind of like
I
have to do it, kind of tick the box.
Yeah, which was I had a great time.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of friends from there, so I wouldn't change anything. But I knew I wanted to be a chef, and perhaps that distracted my kind of
Okay, I'm with
drive.
you. And then so how did you get in touch with Rolly? Did you say, look, I've finished uni, this is my thing?
Yeah, my dad actually met him and said, will you talk to my son? And so I went to meet him, and I didn't go looking for a job. I actually said, look, I'd love to own a restaurant one day. How do I get there? And he said, get in the kitchen. So I was like, okay. And he said, do you want to get in this kitchen? So I said, yeah. And then it was from there, really. And
because there's a common theme, which is really inspiring what I'm picking up from you today, mate, is that you have this ability to turn imposter syndrome into almost like a wave and a thing to propel you.
Yeah.
Instead of crush you, it's like whether you're going to India to take on the job, whether you're going into the kitchen straight out of uni, whether you're just setting up Pot Brixton and saying, fuck it, we'll wing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was you said you learned a lot in that kitchen. What were some of the kind of principles you learned under Rolly that you still kind of use on a weekly basis at Kricket?
Well, I mean, obviously there's the technical side of things, the actual cooking that was invaluable. It's classic French, British cooking. And I believe once you get a hang of that skill set, then it gives you the opportunity to explore other cuisines, and with that kind of foundation. So that's something that stayed with me. And that's ultimately why I was there. I think in terms of the environment, like I said, it was a busy professional kitchen with some very good cooking going on, and the chefs that I learned from, they had the right attitude, and so I kind of learned from them. And it was, it wasn't like some of these kitchens back in the day, or perhaps ones that still exist somewhere, but they're very very strict and very shouty, and some bad things happen in there. It wasn't like that, but there was discipline. There was a system that you needed to adhere to, and you needed to know your place. And I think I did. I'm sure I definitely made mistakes, but at the same time, I knew that I had to prove myself, and I had to work my way up. And I think that's perhaps where nowadays people can forget the importance of that. I probably need to be slightly careful about what I say here, but the welfare of people in kitchens is very important, and I would never deny that. But I think it goes a little far sometimes when people don't understand that structure that they need, that hierarchy that they need to understand to work your way up in a kitchen. And if someone tells you off, then that's a terrible thing. I don't always think it is. There's ways of doing it, and I believe in the firm but fair approach, and that's what I try and instill within my chefs. But I think you do need a certain amount of structure and discipline in order to understand that you need to work a certain amount if you're going to get anywhere.
And also, I think you need to know, when you're speaking to someone in the different ranks, if you've been there yourself, you can have empathy with the way you communicate with that person.
Yeah.
And I think there's I don't know if you ever saw this, but the guy who's now MD of Pret, his name's Pano. He's been there for 23 years. He started off, I think, in the Pret in Heathrow, and he's worked a bit like what the value of that, I think, is he knows exactly when he's speaking to someone on the ground. He's like, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. That's one part of it. But then the other part is just the graft and the discipline.
Yeah, you need to respect the people that you're working with, and that applies to people above you and it applies to people below you. And it's very important.
MKJ Ignite are a team of experienced recruiters who specialise in the challenger brand space. They recruit for over 50 brands, ranging from pre-revenue startups right through to some award-winning brands such as Real Superfoods and Purdy and Fig. They recruit across all levels and all functions, so whether you're looking for a new salesperson, a new marketing whiz, or an ops guru, MKJ Ignite have got you covered. They're bloody good at what they do, trust me. So if you're looking to hire or you're looking for a new role, get in touch with MKJ Ignite. They won't let you down. Are you looking to turbocharge your brand, take it to another level, save money, save energy, save stress, save time? Well, I've got the perfect thing for you. I am delighted to announce that HC Brands, formerly HC Consulting, my boy Harry Clark, has just launched a commercial growth accelerator program designed specifically for challenger food and drink brands. You can upskill your commercial team. They've got so many modules. You can handpick them. We can do the full shebang. You're going to save hours of research. You're going to get the tools to turbocharge your growth, get better clarity on your brand's objectives and directions. And look, Harry's worked with some amazing brands, Holy Moly, Islands, Savile, and Rooted Drinks. He's really helped me with a strategy for Hungary. Yeah, if you're looking to turbocharge your brand, link in the show notes, and you're going to be able to do that easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And how did you, like you said, you went in, posh kid, and you felt like you were kind of this imposter. Like, was there a moment when that kind of switched? Because you've obviously you did enough graft for it.
I didn't feel so much like an imposter back then. It was more that I knew I loved cooking and I wanted to know more about it.
Right.
But I needed to keep my head down and really kind of like, I just knew I knew what I needed to do there, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much feeling like an imposter then. It was more about, right, no, you're nothing. So become something. But the only way to do that is learning from the right people.
Yeah. And then what's the moment when you, like, as you're coming out of there, like, how's Will changed, if that makes sense? Like, as you said, you got in there saying, I know what I want to do. I need to just do it. Like, how did you kind of evolve as you came out of that kind of cocoon of Rolly, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did do all the sections in that restaurant, and that gave me confidence. And finishing up on the sauce, where you're kind of almost dictating the service and coordinating things between different sections. It's a very exciting experience, and I could have stayed there for longer and learned more, I'm sure. But I'm probably quite an impatient person. I wanted the next thing. So, and that's when India came about, coincidentally, really. And then since then, I mean, you know, it's been what feels like quite a long time, and so much has happened in that time. Personally, you know, I think one of the most important things, aside from cooking, is management skills and how you learn from mistakes that you've made in the past. And I think the way I am now with my team is, you know, quite different to the way I was in the beginning and the way I was in India. I think I used to show my frustrations, and you know, yes, I would be working very hard, but you know, I became aware that, and actually my business partner made me aware of this, that, you know, that you affect how other people are in the room. So if you're all, you know, grumpy or whatever, then people are going to be on you know, a little bit quieter, and it doesn't necessarily give a perfect working environment. So I'm very, and I have been for a while, I'm very aware of the way that I carry myself. So, you know, most of the time before I walk into the restaurant, deep breath, walk in and always try and be a bit more positive about things, because there's plenty to be positive about. And so I think management is definitely something that's come a long way, I hope.
Because I suppose when you're going to a restaurant, you're like wanting everything to be so perfect that the only way to get that is to look at what's going wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think it's like the way you're looking at things, and then if you're wearing your heart on your sleeve because it's your baby, then it can it can bubble out and spill into
and that on top of a no day off for several months. It's and the tiredness and the relentlessness of it all. It can become a lot, and at times it has become a lot. But things are much more mellow now in terms of the challenges present themselves in a different way.
Yeah. The in that, back to that book, because it says something that's quite interesting. He says there's two types of what's he called them? He says there's, call them gumption traps, I don't know what that is, but anyway, he says there's setbacks which are external, but which I think a lot of people go through setbacks, which I think is really interesting. We'll talk about some of those. But then he says there's an internal thing called hang-ups, which is where you're psychological motivation to finish the project or continue the project can sometimes wane. Kind of a bit like burnout, I suppose, but it's like an internal thing. Has there ever been moments on this 10-year journey, or 9-year journey, where you felt kind of that hang up, where it's like an internal either kind of malaise about doing the thing, or maybe malaise is too strong a word, but like kind of a feeling of how have you kept the joy alive? Do you know what I'm coming at? Because it's so big building the amount of restaurants. We haven't even talked about SOMA yet, but
you need to occasionally take a step back and motivate yourself. I guess the challenges of the post-COVID era have been major, and they continue to go on, and that can become, for a while it felt like we were kind of swimming against the tide, and we were. Not just us, like people in general, whether it's hospitality or many industries. And, you find yourself pivoting into other forms of revenue. And is it why you started it? Are these things what you wanted to do, like delivery and things like that? Not necessarily, but again, we've had to adapt and understand that we're adapting to stay there, and the last few years have been very challenging, and that there seems to be some light now, but it's still very tough. And without going into that in too much detail, because everyone knows the same old story, rising costs and difficulty with this and that and everything else. It is what it is, and we have to keep going. So motivationally, it can be, it's been challenging, but we've come this far. I'm very proud of that. We've overcome some massive hurdles. There's been times in the past where physically you're exhausted, and that's a bit more difficult. When you're just working so hard that your body is in decline. That's happened, and that's something to very much watch out for, because.
When you say what are the hours? Is it 7 days? Yeah. What are those hours? Just to give some colour to listeners.
Oh, I mean, back when we opened Soho, I worked every day for months.
Yeah.
Double every single day for, I don't know how long it was, but it was months, and I only stopped when my body told me to stop, and I was downstairs and I was basically having a panic attack, and that's happened a few times, and I kind of swore that shouldn't ever happen again, and you need to see the signs of that, because
what's the feeling of panic, that everything's going to go wrong, or you're not going to survive and be able to do it, or
your body just breaks down.
Yeah,
it just breaks down, and you have no control. It's a horrible feeling, and it's just something you need to be aware of, because if you're not in a fit state, then who's you need to be good for the business to be good, I think, even though it's not all about you. It's about the people that run it on a day-to-day basis. So just physically you just need to be aware that you need to be in the best possible place, which is not always possible in hospitality, right? Because the late nights, etc. But there's been lots of challenges, and therefore lots of times where you've had to motivate yourself to keep going.
What does Will say to himself, like when you're doing those doubles, like, and you like, what is the sort of the phrase you're saying to yourself when you look in the mirror, like?
Well, it was a while ago, to be fair. Like, I'm not doing those physical hours in the kitchen anymore. Part of me wishes I wasn't. Most of me wishes I'm not, and I don't. So, I'm not pretending that I do that now. But back then it was no choice. You have to be there. But now, the team are the ones on the ground running things daily in the kitchen.
And what are you doing now? Like, what's your how's your role changed as the business has grown? Yeah, it's changed.
It changes constantly, and I guess in terms of the food, the development is still very much something that I have eyes on the whole time. I encourage my team to help. I love to hear ideas, but ultimately, I will write the menu.
So you used to have a lot of control, like not agency on or input on.
Yeah, I'll write the menus. I do have help. I have a group head chef now who is creatively brilliant, and he helps me. But ultimately, I will. I that's why I started it. So I want to keep going on that, the creative side, and developing things in that respect. And our menus do evolve, and they do change often. So that's a very important aspect for me. Otherwise, it's about managing the team around you, the team that are on site. I still do the occasional service. I'll do the events and things like that. But I haven't done a double for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's that. It's also looking to the future. What is the next project? And what does that look like? And plans have changed as they do so often. But yeah, the role has changed, I guess, to being more high level. I mean, that there's had to be a lot more scrutinizing the business on a daily basis. I mean, that's definitely what my business partner does. Financially, it's we've had to become a lot more sort of hardline with our decisions on what we're bringing into the company and etc. because things cost more these days, and it's harder to turn a profit. So yeah, the role is there's so many aspects to the role. But it's certainly different to what it used to be.
You keep that moment of play, which is the creativity side.
It's so important.
Yeah, because I always think, like, as a business gets bigger, there's this is what Tom from Vincenzo's, the pizza place, was saying. Goes, I started like a pizzeria. Well, I liked slinging pizzas out in my garden during COVID. I loved making pizza. He's like, right, I'll start make a pizzeria. I'll start a pizzeria. So now I spend more time in Excel and like Excel spreadsheets, and I think it's really important you're going to have to do more drudgery and just more as the business gets bigger, but keeping those moments of play.
It's very important. I've been guilty of probably sitting in the boardroom too often, and that's something that you have to do. But at the same time, you got to remember why you're doing it in the first place, and keeping that kind of creativity ticking over is essential, and the people as well. It's creativity, and it's the people, that looking after the people who run the business. I do care about them, and I want to make sure they're okay, and so dealing with them on a day-to-day basis is a big part of what takes up my time.
With the creativity, I want to kind of understand. So we've talked about like everything you've kind of learnt. How do you approach? I'm trying to think back to what I had last Thursday. Now, maybe that pork, is it the pork rib dish that's on the menu at the minute?
Yeah, it's a smoked pork belly.
Yeah, smoked pork belly. Yeah, like maybe we'll use that as a lens to like explain. But so what is Will's thought process and like iterations? Like, how do you create that in your head and like how, I just think the layers of the spicing.
So that dish.
Yeah, or maybe, but not necessarily that dish. Or like one of the dishes on the menu that you really love at the minute is.
Yeah, I mean that dish came from in Mumbai in January. We had a Kazai meal, which is a northeastern, quite unknown cuisine, wherein they gave us this smoked pork belly dish. It was incredibly simple, incredibly delicious, and I thought, got to do something with this, and found that it translated to be a little too simple back here, because there were only 3 ingredients, and so I wanted to kind of like adapt it somewhat. So researching into other pork dishes, we had a chef from Mangalore who I was talking to, and okay, let's do a Mangalorean pork dish. Who incidentally my French chef had eaten in Kerala in January as well. And all these ideas come together. Okay, what goes with pork? Apples. We make a burnt apple chutney and mustard. So we'll get Kasundi mustard from Calcutta, and make a fresh salad with that to go with it. That's an example of that dish. But generally, like I said earlier, the inspiration has to come from a certain place, a certain experience, an idea that you've either experienced yourself or you've read about, you've seen, and it excites you, and you take it from there. Really, can I make it better in my head? Let's see. And by doing that, you develop it with ingredients that are good, and see where you can take it. Sometimes things are just left best alone, and you have to respect that. But yeah, if you feel that you can interpret it in an interesting way, but keep the integrity of the dish at its heart, the flavor comes through the authenticity, I think, or that's at least what I try and do, presenting it in a new light. And yeah, it goes back to the research, the thought process behind each dish. Super important.
And then when you talk to us about the layering of the spice, like how does that, like, in your head work? Have you got like do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, how are you knowing what's going to work and kind of contrast and?
Well, I guess again through the experience that you've had with that dish in the past, and knowing, what ingredients work with other ingredients on a basic level. Going back to that pork dish, pork goes with apple, which goes with mustard, which goes, that's on a basic level. And then trying to add a little bit of complexity within the spicing, basic spicing of a dish. And yeah, it doesn't always work. And then you don't put it on the menu, but trial and error.
You said you went back to Mumbai, was it the beginning of this year?
Yep.
And I think you said, I read somewhere, you said we got a deeper learning, like not just for you, but for the team.
We took 15 of our team over there, and we did a pop-up. So we took a lot of people who had been with us for a long time, some of them who hadn't been to India, but had been serving Indian food. And it's important for us to show them where it's come from, understand the culture. So yeah, we took our team over there, and we did a pop-up, three days of pop-ups in Mumbai, in Jaipur, and I didn't let them rest really. Just a week of solid exploration and learning. And
what are some of the learnings you picked up? Like, so I think you learn a lot. Like, I suppose with books, you can read a book when you're 20. And it's the same book, but if you read it when you're 35, you're a different person, so the experience is completely different.
Yeah.
You go to Mumbai at 24, I don't know how old you are now, but like a couple of years later, you're a different person, Will's different, and I think that can really add to a richer learning. Like, what were some of the things you learned?
I mean, the most important thing for that I wanted them to learn was the culture. Yes, we're going to eat some amazing food, and we're going to try some street food there, and we're going to understand where the dish that we put on the menu, where it's come from, and all that kind of stuff. That's very important, the product. But even more important was the culture, understanding about India and about Mumbai and where this food has come from and the people who cook it. And that was really important. So from the fish market at Sassoon Docks at 4 a.m. Through to Muhammad Ali Road at midnight eating kebabs, we were on it, from dawn till dusk, and that way you see so much of the city, and you absorb so much, and not all of it's nice, but it's important that you realize that it's there.
What are some of the cultural things? A few more things, and we'll wrap this up. I'm loving this, mate. It's so interesting. Like, just understanding the way your brain, like, after having eaten there so many times, works, and understanding like how these wonderful dishes I had last week of kind of how it all kind of comes together. But in terms of what are some of the things you take from that? You wanted your team to experience that culture. Like, what are some of the cultural things you want to take from jumping in the deep end there that you apply at the restaurant that you want customers to feel? Is there anything that comes across from that?
I guess again a deeper understanding into the product, where it's come from. You know, in the past, you know, we've had a bel puri on our menu for so long, and you know, we've had people within our team who have served it a million times, but you know, do they really know what it is? I mean, yes, they do in terms of what's in it, but the story behind it, I think it gives them more confidence. I wanted to make them understand why we do what we do. You know, why, you know, we're not just serving Indian food or our version of Indian food to make money. You know, yes, you need to make money to survive, but at the same time, there's a deeper meaning to that, and there's an importance, there's a love and respect for where it's from, and I want them to feel the same. And I hope they do. I mean, who knows? There was one guy who came with us who kind of turned to me at one stage. He was like, "I don't like it here." You know, he was like, "I don't like seeing the kids on the street and the people begging and stuff." And I was like, you know, and I kind of took him to one side and chatted to him for a while, and I was like, made him realize that whether he was here or not, that this would still be happening. And it's important to understand that there are places like this in the world that aren't pretty and shiny and everything's good all the time. And it's important to understand how these different cities and cultures operate, because it's very different to what we have back here. And I think he came away from the trip like really having experienced it and loving it in many respects. So yeah, I just that understanding of like why we do what we do, and will that help them give the customer a better experience? Will it validate their reason to go to work every day? I hope so. You know, so.
Final bit. I want to talk about your cocktail bar, SOMA, In Search of the Divine.
Yeah,
I love that. What is the divine in your? Yeah, what's your definition of the divine?
Oh well, we're still searching. No, it's SOMA. No, it's that kind of search for. I mean, SOMA is a very. It's been a wonderful addition to our little group because, first of all, it hasn't got a kitchen and no chefs, so I just drink down there. I don't really do a lot of work down there, which is quite refreshing and nice. But it's quite unassuming. You know, we opened that place in the middle of Soho with this late license and didn't really market it in the hope that people would kind of cotton on to the idea and enjoy what was sort of beneath the surface. And I know like a signless speakeasy isn't the latest concept, but you know.
So it's not. It's next door to the Kricket.
It's next door to the restaurant. Yeah. And you kind of only really know it's there because of the bouncer standing outside. And it was a slow burner at the beginning because you know we kind of like stood firm in the hope that people would cotton onto it, and they have, and it's I love it. It's a wonderful environment. I think when you get down there, you know, you can stay there for as long as you want. Everyone's welcome. You can wear what you want. You can sit and have a conversation with the person next to you, and the person opposite. This 9-meter long bar where you can sit all around it, and the drinks are simple and clean and interesting, I think, and the service is personable. I hope it's just it's a lovely environment and a very fun one to be involved in. And yeah, SOMA's been a really great project to be working on.
And what's because I've seen those like I haven't been in there, but they're kind of they almost look like moons.
Yeah.
Like what we've talked about how you create the Kricket experience. Yeah. How's that kind of different? You go into it. Did you think, right, this is going to be a Kricket cocktail bar, or SOMA is a completely new thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the moon is in reference to SOMA has various iterations, meanings, right, in its form, Sanskrit, ancient Sanskrit. It's to mean to distill, to extract. It's the moon god. It's it's got a few different meanings here and there, and we wanted the bar to have its own identity, hence calling it something else, designing it in a completely different way to Kricket. But equally, we didn't want it to create a bar that was like necessarily at a higher level than Kricket in terms of sort of accessibility.
Sure. Yeah.
It's still casual, it's still relaxed, and like I said, everyone's welcome. So it's it's been really successful, and I'm really it's been great working on it, and I think it's quite unique in its approach.
How when you say unique?
I think the drinks are different.
Like an Indian.
Yeah. It's the inspiration is India and beyond. So it's India and Far East. So it was a Japanese hostess bar before we moved in. So we wanted to kind of pay homage to that. So there are still some Japanese whiskies on the menu, and that filters down in some of the cocktails that we provide. But at the time, it's 2 years old now. It's not that old, but I felt like the design was quite fresh, the offering was fresh, I just think hopefully the whole experience is you need to go. You need to try it out.
I need to go. Yeah, that's next on my list.
Yeah.
And then how did you get people in, or was it just a natural?
It's word of mouth, really. I mean, we felt that if you open a bar in Soho that's open till 3 a.m, people will go once they, cotton onto it, and it's the case now.
Mate, I've absolutely loved that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. It's just so good seeing how your brains create this beautiful thing in Kricket, and SOMA's next on my list. So thank you so much, mate.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you.